Hey guys, movie fan here. Today I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told anybody yet except for close friends because it was a pretty big deal and, well, I hesitated to say anything, but it's got to be said. In October last year, I went to visit some relatives in Omaha, Nebraska, and out of nowhere, my nose started to bleed. I couldn't stop it. I put pressure on it, did no good. So I went to Nebraska Medicine, or UNMC as the locals like to call it, because apparently the college is connected to it in some way. Then again, I guess most hospitals are anymore. Anyway, I went there and I sat in that waiting room with a bucket of blood and bloody paper towels in my lap for a good 4 hours. The only thing they did was put a clamp on my nose when they checked me in. And I'll tell you, that thing sucks. It hurt like hell. And even worse, a good lot of the blood would just gather up and go down my throat. And anyway, I'm sitting with that clamp on my nose and a bucket in my lap full of blood and bloody paper towels for 4 hours. And then finally, they call me into the back room. And I was waiting in there for another 3 hours. They come back and they take the clamp off and they see that it stopped. And they looked and they couldn't find where the bleeding was coming from. Of course, all they did was just get that thing they put in your nose and ears and just look up. That's about it. They kind of assumed that the bleeding just, clotted, it stopped, nothing to worry about anymore. So I went back to where I was staying. The next day, it started up again. So again, I went back to UNMC. Again, they clipped my nose. I sat in the waiting room for about 5 hours. They take me back, and this time it only went for maybe about an hour of waiting back there. And they give me nasal spray. It seemed to have helped, but for all I know, maybe it just stopped for a little while. And so I left. Later that night, it started up again. I couldn't stop it again. And I sat in the waiting room once again with a bucket in my lap, bloody paper towels, a clip on my nose, this time with more people around, for 5 hours. And oh my God, the people around me, some of them were worse off than me. And everyone was being completely bypassed for prisoners. Yeah, they let prisoners in the door, right in the back. Whereas for other people who were worse off than me, and then of course myself, we were just set in there the whole time. Yeah, that whole time. One woman I talked to was sitting there for a good 5 hours before I showed up. So she was there for 10 hours by the time I got back there. And when I got back there, I was sitting there for another 4 hours and nobody was coming. Nobody was doing anything. So, I just threw up my hands and I left. I couldn't take it no more. So I just left and hoped for the best. And of course, the bleeding, it stopped for a while, but then the next day it continued. So I went to a different hospital and they helped me right away. They got me in as fast as they could because they were a little backed up. I understand. And, well, they immediately cleaned out my nose and they packed it. Yeah, they packed it. And they said that's what UNMC should have done in the first place. And after a few days of having that packing in my nose, I was all better. And after about a week, I went back home. I talked to my local doctor, and he said they should have packed my nose immediately. And I shouldn't have been sitting back there that long. That was inexcusable. And I'll tell you this, the first day, I was practically the only one there, and I was sitting that long. And the second time, oh man, again, I was practically the only one there, and I was sitting that long. The third time, I'll admit there was a lot of people there, but still, they weren't being moved any more than I was. Prisoners were just coming in through the door and right in the back room. Whereas for the rest of us, we were just sitting there, waiting. And now, I found that I got 3 medical bills from that hospital. Yeah, they charged me 3 times for the 3 visits that I went there. And they didn't do anything for me. All they did was put a clip on my nose, give me a thing of nasal spray, and did absolutely nothing. It's against my better judge to pay the bill, but I paid the first one. I didn't think much of it. The second one, I kind of just folded and went with it. But now I got a third one, and frankly, I think I'll just pay that when I feel like it. Because you know what? This is inexcusable. They, no one should sit that long with a bucket of blood in their lap. I'm surprised I didn't bleed to death. I'm really serious about this. I'm surprised I didn't bleed to death because when my nose was packed, I was wore out from losing all that blood. Because, as long as it took for that stuff to jam up because of that stupid clamp, which, by the way, irritated my nose beyond belief. I had huge sores right there because literally 5 hours of that, then another 5 hours of that, just sitting on my nose like that, it's inexcusable. I should have had something done immediately. In fact, the nurses at UNMC even said, why haven't they tried to cauterize your nose? And they gave me excuses like, oh, we go through a step-by-step process. First we check it, then we try to pack it, which they did not do, and then we try to cauterize it. And I even demanded they do something, and they did nothing. So if you ever go to Omaha, Nebraska, or if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, do not go to Nebraska Medicine, or as it's called, UNMC. And in fact, it's even worse than that. I have an aunt who lives there, and she had a stroke recently. She's fine. She's fine. She's doing well. But she had a stroke. She went there because, that was the closest one, and the ambulance took her there. She sat in the hall for a good, I think, 2 or 3 hours. She wasn't checked in until way later. And prisoners were literally going in droves before her. And she had a stroke. A stroke. That is serious. And I'm sorry, but isn't the usual protocol that they treat serious emergencies first? Like a stroke or my bloody nose? So, yeah, if you ever go to Omaha, Nebraska, do not go to that hospital ever. Just check in anywhere else. You'll be better off. The place I went to was Methodist. Very good hospital, by the way. I highly recommend them because they actually did something. And they didn't double bill me for it either. Unlike UNMC, which has given me 3 bills for them to do nothing. So I got billed 3 times for just sitting in the waiting room and in the back room and to have a clamp on my nose and a little nasal spray. The first one was about $100. Second, $300. Third one, 2 something. Yeah, I got charged that much for just sitting around and hoping that I didn't die from blood loss. This is inexcusable. And quite frankly, they need to be called out for this, which is why I made this video right now. I tried getting a hold of the local news media when I was there, but they never responded. They didn't care. Because, big surprise, it turns out that's the big go-to greatest hospital in the whole area. That's a laugh. It's more proof that you can't trust the media, so I'm doing it myself. And if you're going to ask me if I'm going to sue anybody, no. I couldn't afford a lawyer if I tried. So instead, I'm just going to call them out for what they are. They're a joke. They're pathetic. They're worthless. Again, don't ever go to UNMC. If you live there, don't do it. It's not worth it. And if you ever end up in Omaha, again, do not go to UNMC if you have an emergency. Go anywhere else. You'll be better off. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because it needs to be said. This is Movie Fan signing off.